Do you or someone you play D&D with have ADHD? No? I don't believe you. I'm gonna show you the numbers soon, but I don't like your odds. It's a lot. And like, why? Because D&D can be such a minefield to us. Between interrupting your friends or failing to stay focused for literal hours. So again, why? Well, what if the thing that made you struggle through the school system, the job market, navigating relationships, and doing the damn laundry, what if this very thing actually gave you an unfair advantage to thrive in this hobby? A unique potential to become the player or game master that any table dreams of. I'm not exaggerating when I say that D&D to me has become an essential tool to my survival in this weird world. Which I want that for you because it only takes just a few adjustments. Although to be fair, that's a lot working against us. The average player with the disco gewd encounters a bunch of different struggles at the table, and I'm hoping that I can help you get past these very real obstacles. Starting with the obvious one, our inability to stick with a hobby. You've tried learning crochet and making it your entire personality for about 2 weeks, and then got bored, so you decided to learn guitar, or baking sourdough, or making stop motion animation. And oh, is that a Magic the Gathering card over here? Between all those books you never finished? Who's to say D&D will be any different, rather than just shiny new things syndrome? For a D&D player, that's terrifying, and for a game master, it's doomsday. What if I lose interest halfway through a campaign? I'm not just gonna be disappointing myself, but 4 other people. Before you keep spiraling. Good news, there's a solution and it's actually in the problem. If your interests operate on a short cycle, then we can exploit that and turn one long cycle into several smaller cycles. If you've ever written a to-do list and split up one task into 7 tasks, you've been doing this all along. Basically, you need to create ways to refresh dopamine of your long-term endeavor with a bunch of shorter-term objectives. For a GM, that can look like running mini-campaigns, therefore giving you a chance to explore the shiny new thing every 6 weeks or so, and ditch the space travel campaign when it's run its course for a post-apo game because you've just seen Mad Max Fury Road and now all you can think about is monster trucks with flamethrowers. Anyways, it's even possible to use the same technique on a longer campaign by running it in seasons. It allows you to reset after each big milestone with new character arcs, new locations, villains, love interests. Season 1 was in the Feywild, but nothing stopped Season 2 from being about time travel. And Season 8, well, we don't talk about Season 8, the network was really just trying to make money on this one. But if you're a player, you might not necessarily have all that much control over these things, which doesn't mean you're doomed either. Actually can turn you into a driving force if you play your cards right, and make you everyone's favorite princess at the table. Let's play a minigame. I call it Roleplay Assassin, and surprisingly, it doesn't actually involve any murder. I know, disappointing. Basically, you give yourself secret missions that have to do with the other player characters. You identify a target and an objective relative to this target. Like for example, get Bilbo to open up about one of his fears, or get Gandalf to lean on me in a tough moment, or convince Legolas to become my mentor. Once you accomplish it, you reveal that this was your secret mission, and the whole table might actually want to join you in that. If you want, I've got a whole worksheet with sample missions, and I've just made it free on my Patreon, so feel free to grab that in the description. So now all of our problems are solved, right? We can start talking about this unfair advantage that we mentioned earlier. No, hold your horses. It gets worse. Let me pitch something to you, and you tell me if that sounds fun. How would you like to spend a few hours sitting still on a chair, staying focused as so much information flies around, and you have to listen to it because there will be a quiz. Oh, and also you're not allowed to use your phone. Welcome to the average classroom. Oh, yeah, a TTRPG session as well, I guess. But there's a reason I'm bringing up school, and it's not to remind you of your high school drama, though it's a nice side effect, but because while D&D is definitely more fun than math class, they kinda have the same structure, which means you've likely spent 15 years of your life on average developing survival mechanisms to survive the classroom that now you can use to survive a D&D game. Let's bring back that high school trauma. Close your eyes, try to remember it. You're sitting in the back of Mr. Teacher Name's class, bored out of your mind. What do? You doodle. And yeah, if you didn't know, it can be an ADHD thing. Doodling is a form of stimming, aka something that those of us with the disco gene use to busy your hands with. And it helps regulate the nervous system if you need to be a bit more stimulated, and somehow it also helps if you need to be a bit less stimulated. Don't ask me, I don't get it either. But either way, the fancy doctors in lab coats say it's a good band-aid for both. See, what you learned in math class actually can be useful later in life. But what you probably didn't learn in math class is that stimming at the table can take so many forms. Any repetitive task you can do without thinking about it too much. For me, it's knitting, which considering I play at least 3 times a week, means I have a bunch of presents ready by Christmas. But once again, you can channel this little peculiarity of your brain to benefit the entire table. Sometimes, if the goal is to keep yourself stimulated by busying yourself with a little extra task, then how about make that a task that that will be useful to the entire table. Give yourself extra responsibilities to make sure you're never bored. Tracking initiative, DJing the music. Note-taking in a physical journal as in on paper has also been great for me. Which I have to issue a warning might make your GM fall hopelessly in love with you. However, maybe you were not the doodling kid. And that's because I might have forgotten to mention something a little important. We can't talk about ADHD without reminding that, surprise, surprise, the disco gene doesn't look the same for everyone. Unlike what some would have you believe, it's not all about getting distracted whenever you see a squirrel. Which I do, but that's beside the point. Those fancy doctors in fancy lab coats who write the fancy psychiatry books separated us into three main categories. Hyperactive type, which TV likes to caricature as an unstoppable bouncing ball of energy that destroys everything in its path. Inattentive type, that's me, who gets filled with boiling anger if you interrupt me in the middle of something. And combined type, granting you the power of the best of both worlds. Doodling and stuff, that's just one possible way your boredom can express itself. But maybe your issue is you're constantly pointed out that you keep interrupting others, or always want to do stuff and others don't always get a chance to have as much spotlight. I've been there all the time, every day, constantly, never-endingly. I want to roleplay all the time. I am an ever-hungry beast. I just get really excited about the game and it's a bit hard to police myself constantly to not be too excited. So instead, I found some success in making it a feature, not a bug, and designing my characters in a very specific way. Like creating a character concept that by design will engage and bring spotlight to other PCs. Say a character who doesn't know much about the world, so they keep asking the others to explain their vision of the world. Or one that's basically the party mom and will keep checking in with the others. Because now it's baked into how the character behaves, simply by roleplaying my character as I designed them, it will naturally channel my never-ending excitement into creating scenes and spotlight for others. And doesn't that sound familiar? And yeah, that's because I keep tricking people into learning tips for ADHDers, because they generally tend to work for everyone. Gotcha. But let's say somehow that's not enough. You like talking, and it's hard to can it. Well, you're in luck. There is a role at the gaming table that tends to do a whole lot of talking. Have you given any thought to becoming a game master? They're in high demand, which I'm sure will be so easy and you won't encounter any issues with it. So there is a chance, a tiny little chance, that by deciding to become a GM, you may have brought upon yourself a workload so heavy that it could slowly crush you. There's a tiny little thing working in your disadvantage here, and it has a really cute name. Executive dysfunction. It's what makes it hard to plan and manage tasks, and worst of all, get started. It's also this tendency to leave things at the last minute, like paying your bills, or prepping your game. And yeah, I guess you could justify it as I just work better under pressure. Just like you didn't start writing your essay a week early, but you got it done 5 minutes before deadline. Oopsie. There goes my sleep cycle. If you're a player, it's a bit more socially accepted to show up at the table with your character sheet, your winning smile, and be ready to go. But as a GM, let alone a disco GM, it's really easy to little by little drown and choke in the sea of prep that a game could require, and to plan and organize this prep so it's useful, as opposed to spending 8 hours just putting together a cool music playlist, which is useful and I would argue necessary. But still, we left off right before a fight last session. You probably should look up the stat block at some point, and there's a few things that can help, like setting a moment with a friend where they work on their thing while you work on your thing. That's called buddy doubling, by the way, and there's a reason every ADHDer and their mother swears by it. Or remember when you said you do well under pressure? Or like when I assumed you said this is a pre-scripted video. If prepping a game is a messy business for you, then maybe embrace the mess and trust yourself to do well with low prep, high improv games. But these are all very broad strokes. These tips have helped me, but if I'm being honest, they don't solve my biggest problem. My biggest problem, whether I'm a GM or a player, isn't actually one big problem that can be solved all at once. My biggest problem is that I have lots of tiny problems I encounter that proliferate like gremlins. It's an ensemble of small things that each contribute to this big amorphous blob of bad that's so tangled that I don't know where to start to unravel it. In TTRPG, but also everywhere else in my life. This is a weird one to explain because at the same time it's the one concept that will be the biggest impact in solving everything. But also it's the one that I can't do for you because my amorphous blob looks different from your amorphous blob. Best I can do is try to give you the keys to tackling it. Bit by bit, gremlin after gremlin. A lot of my life with ADHD, especially having spent a big part of it undiagnosed, was a slow process of incrementally making small adjustments to my environment. That way, instead of bashing my head against the wall, I'm working with my brain, not against it. I'm gonna give you an example that has nothing to do with TTRPG. Maybe in the morning, maybe sometimes it's hard to remember to put on deodorant. I could be mean to myself and tell myself that I suck and I have to try harder to remember, or I could make an adjustment. If my stick of deodorant is in the bathroom, I'll forget. But if it's on the table where I do my makeup, I found that I'm a lot more likely to remember. So now it just lives there permanently. It's one small thing, but one small thing adds up with another, and before I know it, the big blob isn't as scary anymore. So I tried that for TTRPG, and I'm gonna give you a bunch of those rapid fire. Ready, set, go. When running D&D, I always forget about inspiration, despite the fact that I put a huge sticky note on my GM screen to remind me to award inspiration. Yeah, it's not happening. So now I tell my players to nominate each other for inspiration when they feel it's warranted. Also, as a player, if I'm playing in some in-person game, one of my bad habits gets in the way. I'm trying to quit smoking, but it's taking time. So until then, I still want to be able to enjoy a game without being distracted because I'm thinking about smoking. So now I ask my table to give me a 5-minute warning before we start. That way I can have my smoke and not have to think about it for the next 4 hours. Next, if I'm GMing, I will always procrastinate running the game because I'll always have an excuse for why I should finish something else first. So now my players are the ones to schedule the game, and in doing so, I have a deadline, which honestly really helps. Also, I suck at quick math, so I count HP up rather than subtracting it down. And when I take my ADHD meds, I often get a slump at the end of the day when it wears off, so I kind of schedule my work days in a way where if I have a game in the evening, I do the easy stuff so I don't have to take meds that day. So take that, amorphous blob. Now I won't lie, this doesn't happen overnight. It's a bunch of little adjustments, but they add up. So how do you build your version of that? That's the question. It's not something that happens without you taking action. And to take action, again, nothing better than the system. Let's steal a tip from a fellow ADHDer and D&D player you might know, Jessica McCabe, who runs the YouTube channel How to ADHD and mentions she plays D&D. In her case, to make the house run more smoothly with her roommate from college, they made a ritual to take deliberate action to think of what was difficult in the week and how we could solve it. And I think that's the key, making it a ritual. Whether this happens with the whole table after a game, which feedback sessions are the perfect opportunity for that. Also because ADHDers are not the only ones who sometimes struggle at the table, and it could be beneficial to everyone. But it can also be a thing that you do solo, maybe at the beginning of your prep session if you're a GM, or maybe after every level up if you're a player, or any time that feels right to you really, as long as you make it into a ritual. If you don't take deliberate action to notice these things in yourself, it's not gonna happen. Or it will, but a whole lot slower. Okay, that being said, I kinda wanna move on. On one hand, because I think you can take it from here and turn it into something tailored for you and your own brain, but also because so much of my life is spent thinking about all the things I do to get by. And I'm not interested in just getting by, I'm interested in fucking thriving. Because I genuinely believe that ADHDers have amazing potential to become amazing players and GMs, to the point we might be going in with a bit of an unfair advantage. So here's a little love letter to the hobby and to our brains. Earlier we talked about something you've been cursed with, picking a new hobby every 2 weeks. Well, surprise, surprise, what if that so-called curse is actually a blessing in disguise? You can bring all these varied hobbies into TTRPG. Because our brains are constantly looking for new experiences, your jack of all trades nature means you bring into your games a wide variety of interests. Not only does this mean you create rich world building, but also you engage with the TTRPG hobby in a wide range of ways. D&D is a gateway hobby. I started playing it and eventually brought into so many different TTRPGs, but on top of that, starting a campaign might get you interested in homebrewing, map making, making props, painting minis, crafting terrain, or could lead you to learn about storytelling techniques, adventure writing, history, folklore, music, warfare. TTRPG is a million hobbies in a trench coat. But beyond their interests being varied, they're also real f***ing intense. ADHD brains have a unique ability to pick up something and get unbelievably obsessed with it. The engagement and joy we get from partaking in our interests reaches otherworldly levels of sparking joy that would send Marie Kondo spin out in outer space. When we're interested in something, we don't do it halfway. It's not a casual f***ing interest. It's an enthusiastic dive into a rabbit hole that's gonna have to bring its A game in order to contain you, which means you're likely to go the extra mile to bring awesome stuff to your players, handwrite letters and handouts, or homebrew a whole bunch of poisons for just one of your players. That's me. I'm doing that because I don't value my sleep, which, you know what, is fine. We don't have to address it. Let's just move on. Actually, while we're on the topic of not valuing my sleep, you guys made me lose a little bit of sleep this month, but in a good way. I wasn't planning on doing this again for a while, but I'm putting a big discount on Patreon till the end of the week because I've got something to celebrate. This month, the channel reached 50,000 subscribers, which is insane. So thank you for giving me permission to be weird and deciding to follow along. I kinda have the best job in the world, and it's thanks to you all. Okay, now I stop talking about my stuff and I let you get back to what you came here for. Bye. Your mind goes a million directions all the time, which gave you a superpower that the fancy scientists in fancy lab coats call a tendency toward divergent thinking. Yeah, it's a terrible name for a superpower. They're very bad at naming things. But it means a high probability of thinking outside the box and finding so many solutions to one problem. The previous one was extra awesome for GMs, but this one is incredible for players. There's several of us players at the table and we're all gonna pick up on different things. That variety of thinking processes in one table means all the brains complement each other, but because you're likely to think kinda sideways, you're kinda the wild card. You'll connect the dots in a way that others might not have thought about, or find pretty original solutions to a puzzle. Because to be honest, lots of times the obvious answer doesn't even occur to us. Sometimes it's gonna be wacky and far-fetched, but sometimes, well, ask my Call of Cthulhu GM. I put together so many of his mysteries that now he fears me. Honestly, it's a loss to the world. I didn't choose to become a detective, but collaboratively with the other players, that variety is a blessing. And I'm not done! You know, earlier when we said you procrastinate your assignments until last minute because you work well under pressure? I think it really understated how much you work well under pressure. Because ticking clocks are harbingers of dopamine and adrenaline, also known as disco rocket fuel. Funny, we just spent a whole bunch of time talking about a hobby that has so much to do with improvisation. I wonder if that's gonna be relevant. Yes, but in more ways than you might think. Of course, improv is the easy one. You're likely to be spontaneous and come up with really cool stuff on the spot. It's kinda the default way you function. Planning ahead, even as an over-prepper, I don't know if I can call my prep a plan. Most often it's just an excuse to think about the game outside the session. But I ditch half of it the moment players sit down and whip up the other half in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. You can easily pivot and think on your feet when you think something cool is on the way. And you can also pivot when you notice something less cool happening. You have a good instinct for pacing because, well, again, it's like your entire brain is structured to detect bad pacing. Meaning you're instinctively always trying to drive the story forward. As a GM, that means your sessions are going to be more exciting for it. And as a player, it means you're likely to take initiative. And GMs like that even more than when you bring them cookies. In broad terms, passively, you're highly adaptable. But trying to harness this adaptability a bit more actively, you become maybe a bit of a risk taker. And a little experimental with things rather than staying within the beaten path. So, cards on the table. I had like 5 crises of faith while writing this video and how to even present this topic. On the one hand, I've been telling you about stuff that makes TTRPG tough when you have ADHD, and then I've been telling you about traits that set you up for success. And while I do believe that yes, it's true, there are traits that set us up with an amazing potential to thrive. Despite that, never in my life do I call ADHD a gift. In TTRPG, yeah, there's some upsides, but I don't want to be downplaying all the struggles that pop up. Like, I have moved past some of these struggles, but it took effort. And that doesn't mean that another struggle isn't gonna pop up again later. I still come out of a game sometimes wondering if I took up too much space. And coming up with new systems to avoid that is gonna require another effort again. So I think to me there's another question that I kinda wanna hit and that I think is also really interesting. And it's if we have so much potential, but sometimes it takes so much effort to get to that place and see that potential, then is it worth it? And I guess there's 2 ways to answer that question. One of them is looking at the numbers, so we're gonna do that. I asked you in a poll on YouTube, and at the time I'm writing this, the post got 2,300 votes. Among that, 37% have ADHD themselves, and 27% of them say at least one person in their group does. And if you add the number of people who aren't diagnosed but have a really strong suspicion, that's even more, which I think shouldn't be dismissed because not everyone has easy access to a diagnosis. And yeah, sure, maybe the poll could be biased because maybe my ADHD is so strong that it attracts other ADHDers into its orbit, but just for the sake of it, let's keep going down that road. If you type D&D in your YouTube search bar, it will barely take any scrolling to find a video that was made by someone with ADHD. Ginny D, Kelly of the Dungeon Dudes, Deficient Master, so many more, along with yours truly. You look at the greater TTRPG scene and find people like Travis Willingham or Amy Vorpal, and how many more are peer-reviewed? Peer-reviewed meaning not officially diagnosed, but ADHDers took one look at you and were like, oh yeah, that's a jolly good fellow. So you know, lots of people. In my group, the Venn diagram is pretty much a circle. So do you still like your odds, punk? I'm not trying to tell you might have ADHD. I'm not one of the fancy doctors in fancy lab coats, and that's not the point I'm trying to make anyway. What I am saying is that there's a lot of people with ADHD who decided it is worth it. And I think that's one answer, and then the other way is looking at it from a personal lens. if our question is, do ADHDers have an advantage to thrive in this hobby? Then I'm gonna do the boring but informative thing of looking up the definition of thriving. And there's two of them. Yes, on one hand, it can mean being amazing at something, which, yeah, you can be. But the other definition of it is, never mind being amazing, are you having a blast? D&D seems designed to scratch all the itches that our brains are craving. It brings stimulation, encourages creativity, embraces chaos. It's like it was built for us. On my end, whether having ADHD has been an advantage or a struggle when it comes to the hobby, regardless, my history with TTRPG has always been intertwined with my history with ADHD. It's part of how I coped with stuff throughout my pretty laborious existence. For a big portion of my life, I wondered how the hell do people dare to pretend that life is beautiful, because everything, including the things I was supposed to love, cost an unimaginable amount of effort and labor to just keep up. I landed myself into a monumental burnout at the ripe age of 19. And when I say monumental, I mean I went a little bit crazy. Like, I was scared to have coffee or strawberries because I was convinced they would get me high. Why? I don't know. Go figure. And that's when I got myself roped into D&D. The only thing that made me feel creative and excited during a burnout, and finally got me to crawl out of that hellhole, later knowing that I had a game to look forward to on Thursday, is what got me through the week during the tougher periods of my life. And mind you, at the time, I wasn't diagnosed. That came later, and then I started looking into treatment. That summer, I started a TTRPG channel, and 3 years later, it's my full-time job. I'm not saying that so you can compliment me on being so high-functioning. Actually, I think throughout my life, my high-functioning was really just high anxiety. The reason I'm saying that is because TTRPG has remained my most stable relationship. The one hobby that no matter what, I keep coming back to, no matter the trials. There's one hill I will always die on. One sentence I absolutely hate. When someone says that if you truly love something, it should feel effortless. That's the biggest lie we've ever been fed. Because you love something doesn't mean your symptoms suddenly disappear. Actually, it might be a tell of how much you love it. You wouldn't be stressing about something if you didn't care. So whether it's worth it for you, well, that's for you. But here's my 2 cents. Yes, you might need some adjustments to go from struggling to thriving. But you have ADHD, which means outside of TTRPG, you're already making adjustments regardless. Sorry, that's your lot in life. So if you're gonna be making adjustments anyway, might as well make them for something that's gonna make you feel good. Because we deserve to enjoy our lives. What a crazy notion. If you want to know why D&D feels so good to ADHD brains, I strongly recommend this amazing video by Skylar the ADHDM, and because making those adjustments and communicating your needs to your group doesn't always come naturally, you can click on this video here, which pretends to be about feedback, but really is about discovering your own needs and communicating them to your group. The easy, not awkward way. So on this note, have a good evening, and if the amorphous blob is ever too hard to detangle, have you tried stabbing it?